163 players suited up for action in the Canadian Premier League's inaugural season. Today, we're going to unveil our list of the top 50. Hey everyone, my name is Adam Jenkins. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, just because we've finalized our 50, don't expect everyone to agree on the rankings. Let's get this countdown started. We'll begin on the West Coast with a young man from Surrey, BC. Zack Hoeven entered the Pacific Fold through the CPL U Sports draft after his time with the UBC Thunderbirds. The shifty winger had 2 tallies and 2 assists in his first year as a pro.
Zack Hoeven is a player who, at the beginning of the season, nobody would have known who he was, a player coming out of the U Sports draft. What you like about Zack Hoeven is he's a player that when he gets on the ball, his first 3 steps are just about faster than anybody on the pitch. So he had this unique ability to not only beat defenders, but turn a corner and provide decent service.
Reminds me of a player I grew up admiring, Fiji Flash, Ivor Evans for the Vancouver 86ers. This kid's dynamic as well. He can whip in a good cross. Hope to see him climb this list next year.
And now our first goalkeeper of the countdown. A graduate from Bobby Smirniotis' Sigma FC side, Tristan Henry impressed between the pipes throughout the season, including back-to-back clean sheets in the CPL finals.
A few of my fellow analysts gave Tristan Henry a bit of a hard time earlier this season. He made a couple of mistakes early on, which I think kind of shaped opinions of him. Since then, and in the full season in particular, I think he's been one of the better goalkeepers in the league. Should have been on the nominee list for goalkeeper of the year, and a really safe pair of hands in the finals for Forge.
Tristan Henry's impressive performances throughout the season made him the undisputed #1 for Forge, and by the end of the season, he was also a champion.
English striker Jordan Brown checks in at number 48. The former Arsenal and West Ham academic suited up in 32 matches for Tommy Wheeldon Jr., scoring 5 times, including the opener in the Cavs' massive win over Vancouver in the Canadian Championship.
Yeah, I think when you're doing these lists, you need to have that moment. And Jordan Brown gave us that moment in Vancouver against the Whitecaps, scoring an absolutely incredible goal. So I'm not surprised to see him in this list.
A player who arrived in the CPL expecting to score a lot of goals. And throughout much of this season, he was a player who gave Calvary FC a dynamic duo up front next to Don Malonga. And also, early in the season at least, had a flair for the timely goal.
He's a player who only turned 23 in November and still has a lot of potential.
There is no cooler cat in the Canadian Premier League than Kyle Porter. This is a man who exemplifies silent but deadly.
The first signing in York 9 history, veteran Kyle Porter lands at number 47. A Mississauga, Ontario native, Porter relished the opportunity to play close to home and was a versatile piece for Y9 in the middle of the park, both creating and finishing for the Nine Stripes.
Kyle Porter for me is Mr. 7 out of 10, and I mean that as a compliment. You know, you always know what you're going to get from him. I think he's calm. I think he's technically sound. The question I have with Kyle Porter is, can he go to an 8 or a 9?
I thought Kyle Porter throughout this season just brought that maturity, that calm presence on the ball when he got into good attacking areas. Probably somebody that if you asked him, thought he could have brought a little bit more this season, but still very deserving of a top 50 nomination.
Forge's Kwame Awuah came as advertised for the Champs. The Toronto native used his experience with NYCFC and the Canadian national program to provide a sturdy defensive presence while also tying for the CPL lead with 5 assists.
I think what you like about Kwame Awuah, if you're Forge FC, is just his ability to play different positions and play all those positions at a high level. Whether it be at left fullback, in center midfield, or even as a wide player on the left for Forge FC, he was able to make an impact wherever he was and provide timely assists in important games.
Formed a really strong partnership with Chris Nanko down the left-hand side in the finals in particular, and I think if that's his position, if that's where he really focuses on next year, you'll see him become one of the top left-backs in the league.
From one hammer to the next, Giuliano Freneau is next up at number 45. Another Sigma FC graduate, he provided a layer of grit and toughness that endeared him to Forge supporters. His 62 tackles were just outside the top 3 in the CPL to go along with 8 yellow cards in 31 appearances.
So I remember walking into the office one day mentioning that Giuliano Freneau was a pretty good player, saw him play a few games, then he was decent, and then Kurt Larson looked at me with his squinty eyes and thought I was crazy. And I'm happy that Giuliano Freneau backed me up and had a great year and gets into this list. I can't wait to hear what Kurt Larson has to say about him.
What you like about Giuliano Freneau is he always made good decisions, rarely turned over the ball in bad areas, whether it be at right fullback and holding mid when Coach Bobby Smirniotis needed somebody to fill in there. Giuliano Freneau always stepped up for the big occasion.
After a year-long recovery from an Achilles injury in 2017, Elijah Adekugbe refocused and rediscovered his game. The technical midfielder patrolled the center of the pitch for Cavs, collecting 4 assists and 1 goal in his first CPL campaign.
Adekugbe is a player I like a lot. I had him in my team of the year. He was really unfortunate to fall out of the starting lineup due to that Ledgerwood-Boucher combination that Cavalry had.
A young midfielder out of Calvary FC, a player who I liked because of his accountability. He was responsible when he got it in tough areas. He wasn't afraid to go back and try and take hold of games. A player who right now is learning under Nick Ledgerwood and Julian Boucher at Calvary FC, but one to watch for the future for sure.
Another former TW Spartans alum, Cavalry's Joel Waterman, lands at number 43. The versatility to play in the middle or drop back onto the back line allowed the U Sports draft pick to make 25 appearances this season, collecting 3 points along the way.
He was so valuable to that Calvary FC roster because when a player went out at the back, whether it be a center back, he could fill in there, he could step into midfield. He was also valuable for Tommy Wilden Jr. at Calvary because having a player who's so versatile allowed Tommy to adjust in game without really having to make a substitute, whether it was pushing Waterman up into midfield, dropping him back. Joel Waterman, another player who makes good decisions. His passing percentage out of the back is exceptional.
I think we'll all remember that goal that he scored, the little volley off the corner, justifying all coaches who choose to play soccer tennis in training. Bona fide speedster.
His speed is unmatched in the CPL.
Marseille France export Andre Bona joins Stephen Hart's crew after a spell at UQAM. The former sprinter provides tremendous pace up the wing while also being rock solid defensively. Bona led the CPL with 66 tackles.
You want to talk about success stories out of the CPL U Sports draft? Andre Bona out of UQAM really made that right back spot his own for HFX Wanderers FC and put in a lot of really commendable performances along the way.
Probably the quickest player in the league, just absolutely lightning fast, particularly over distance. What I'd like to see from him now is can he add more to the attacking side of his game, more end product when he gets in the final third.
Another club makes its debut on the countdown as FC Edmonton forward Umar Duke comes in at number 41. The Belgian recorded 7 goals for the Eddies in 2019, the second most on the squad. He also had an element of sandpaper to his game, receiving 6 yellow cards.
Umar Duke was one of the few bright attacking spots for FC Edmonton this season. I think he gave Jeff Paulus an option out wide, somebody who could get on the ball, face up, take players one-on-one.
I think a lot of people were probably wondering why this guy was released by FC Edmonton in the off-season. He was one of their better attacking players, goals, assists, played 2 positions up front and out wide. I think the call Jeff Paulus had to make was, can Umar Duke become one of the top attacking players in the CPL up alongside the likes of Tristan Borges?
People forget that this guy scored 7 goals. He was in the race for the Golden Boot for much of the season as well.
So here's how we ranked numbers 50 through 41. Forge and Cavalry players make up most of this bracket. Let's see if that trend will continue.
Oliver Minatel, the Brazilian Ghost.
The Brazilian Ghost really is an apt nickname.
Has anyone else said Brazilian Ghost?
Brazilian forward Oliver Minatel wraps up the 40s. A player with lots of global experience, he provided a spark on the attack, netting 7 league goals.
You're not quite sure how he always ends up on the score sheet, but he's always there.
He's not a big physical guy at all, but he somehow finds a way to get on the end of crosses and get on the end of set pieces. Really important player for Cavalry when Sergio Camargo went down.
But then he disappeared, like a Brazilian ghost would at times as well.
Japanese import Koda Ito is next. A successful stint at the Open Trials led to his first professional contract. Described as extremely dynamic and very attack-minded by Coach Hart, Ito was steady for HFX, and his first career goal was a thing of beauty.
Remarkable, really, that Koda Ito makes this list of the top 50, just given he was a player nobody knew before this season, a player who came from the Open Trials in Montreal, a player that all the CPL coaches kept an eye on during those trials.
I think whenever he was in the lineup, Halifax were a higher tempo, more dangerous team, so I'd really like to see him land somewhere in the CPL in 2020.
Manny Aparicio, a bona fide creator, the former TFC man was always involved for Y9, finishing the season with the 3rd most touches in the league and garnered worldwide attention after a sensational long-range goal against Pacific.
Manny Aparicio coming back to Canada after successful stints in Spain and abroad.
Probably wants to be higher up on this list, has the ability to be higher up on this list, but at the same time, not the most consistent performance throughout the season.
I think maybe we expected to see a little bit more of. I think he has so much talent. I think he came into the year and you looked at him and saw York 9's version of Kyle Becker, a really great passer of the ball, supplies the forwards, progresses the ball through midfields. I just think he maybe faded a little bit, and he did carry a heavy load, to be fair to him, as the season wore on. So I think he has all the talent to be in the top 15 in this list. But he needs to put together a full season in order to achieve that.
Adored by fans and teammates alike, Andre Ramprasad of the Wanderers slots in at number 37. The Trinidadian box-to-box midfielder was a consistent performer with a nose for the ball.
Andre Ramprasad just brought that kind of calmness and competitive edge to a Halifax midfield that was up and down throughout the season. One of the constants for Stephen Hart was Ramprasad, was Elton John, and I thought that duo from Trinidad did well.
Mr. Consistent for them, has everything you want in a number 8. He's big, he's good on the ball, he works hard off the ball to win it back. No surprise to me that Stephen Hart wanted to bring back Andre Ramprasad as one of his first re-signings of this offseason.
We find Chilean Rodrigo Gattis at number 36. A certified sniper, no player in the league laced more shots on target in the regular season than the Y9 striker. His 9 goals were most on the roster and were 5th most in Canada.
When Jimmy Brennan needed a player to step up in 2019 for a York 9 team that was struggling to score at times throughout the spring season, Rodrigo Gattis was really who York 9 turned to find the timely goal, whether it be against the Montreal Impact in Canadian Championship play or any other match in the CPL. Rodrigo Gattis managed to step up when maybe some of his teammates, Simon Adjie, Ryan Telfer, were struggling to find the net.
He has a ton of ability, but I don't think we saw it on a consistent basis, and it'll be interesting to see if he is back and if he is, how he fits in for York 9 next year.
Yeah, Matthew Arnone, big, strong center back, not someone you want to meet in a bar and get in a fight with. I think he's probably one that would not turn down the chance to throw fists.
Number 35 belongs to former York Lion and League One standout Matthew Arnone. The strong fullback was arguably the Wanderers' sturdiest defender, ranking in the top 5 in CPL interceptions and clearances. Arnone added 2 goals and an assist this season as well.
You have to wonder whether York 9 are kicking themselves for not picking up Matthew Arnone. He's a York University grad. He played for Vaughan Azzurri in League One Ontario, so he was in the area. He was known to them. He ended up in Halifax and is just a really reliable central defender. When Peter Scharler left in mid-season, you wondered if that defence might fall apart, and it didn't because Matthew Arnone held it together.
Pacific's first signing, Caden Chung, comes in at number 34. A local product, Chung ate up the 2nd most minutes for PFC after stops in Germany and with the Whitecaps youth system. A rising Canadian prospect, Chung was a solid option on defense and up the wing, adding 3 points.
Caden Chung, he's the very first CPL player I ever interviewed, and I gotta say, as far as character guys in a locker room go, you could not do any better than him. This is a guy who, even though he's young, has already shown the kind of leadership qualities that make you a star in this league, and truly, I think his star is still rising.
A right fullback who didn't really put a foot wrong this season, and you'd expect him to continue to learn as a professional and really grow into that role out there and maybe do even more in 2020. He makes good decisions on the ball for a young player. He's somebody who can join the attack if he needs to. Loads of pace, a good soccer brain, good vision. Caden Chung, certainly a player out west to watch in 2020.
One of Bobby Smirniotis' many dynamic attacking options, former League One Golden Boot winner Anthony Novak earned spot number 33, trailing only league MVP Tristan Borges. Novak netted 6 goals, 3 of them game winners, to go along with 3 assists.
Whether it was talking about his breakfast or talking about deciding not to go to the military in 2019, Anthony Novak was one of my favorite players to watch just because of his profile, coming straight from League One where he scored a lot of goals, and then really stepping up for Forge this season when they were looking for a number 9.
Quite the rise this year for Anthony Novak, from thinking about joining the Army to being a championship winner with Forge. Nothing fancy about this guy, just an old-fashioned centre forward. He's big and burly. He's not the quickest or prettiest, but he knows how to finish and he overpowers defenders.
What I remember most about Anthony Novak was after an injury, he was wearing the headband. Looked like the military man. It was a good look for Anthony Novak. He wore it well.
The player we love to hate, just a total pest.
He's a villain for sure. Cerebral villain.
Jose Escalante was one of my favorite players in the CPL this season.
A player you love to have on your team but hate to play against, Cavalry's Jose Escalante. His offensive contributions were also significant with 4 goals and 4 assists this season.
Jose Escalante, what can I say about Jose Escalante? Well, he's a Honduran player, and it's very obvious when he plays that he's bringing that kind of Central American flair to his style of play, but also his ability to get under your opponent's skin is a very underrated, though I'm sure very appreciated factor over at Cavalry FC.
I think that side of Jose Escalante's game shouldn't overshadow the fact that he's a really good player in his own right, and that's why he's on this list. Just a powerful, dangerous wide player who really had a strong year, even aside from the antics for Cavalry in 2019.
A master of the dark arts, if you will. Jose Escalante is part of the reason Cavalry FC was so successful in 2019.
One of the 3 nominees for U21 Canadian of the Year, Y9's Eddie Nabzi lands at number 31. A speedy and technical defender, the Montrealer finished in the top 10% of CPL defenders in nearly every per 90 minutes passing and defending category.
Caden Chung, the Moroccan spice of the Y9 backline.
The reason the CPL was built for players like Caden Chung, a player who came out of the PLSQ system, again, not known throughout Canada, not known really anywhere, and now he steps into a York 9 position and really holds down that left-sided fullback position. Probably needs to learn a few things defensively, but going forward, there was nobody better on the left side than Caden Chung, except for maybe Tristan Borges.
Caden Chung for me is way too low on this list. Should be much higher. I thought he had an outstanding year. I remember being at the inaugural game in Hamilton where York 9 played Forge and thought he looked a little bit like Bambi on ice when he came off the bench, didn't look comfortable or confident at all. To see how he's progressed since then has been phenomenal. He absolutely dominates that left flank. And I think this guy is going to be an Olympic player for Canada next year and has a big future ahead of him.
Numbers 40 to 31 are dominated by HFX and York 9 players. Join us after the break to see how our top 30 looks.